Welcome back. I first want to thank President Clinton and Humana for their new involvement with golf and the PGA Tour. We have a common goal. Health and wellness is one of the underappreciated benefits of golf participation. A new study just released said that an 18-hole round of golf meets the 10,000 steps per day guideline for exercise recommended by most golf experts and medical experts. And when you walk 18 holes, you burn 2,000 calories, which is roughly the equivalent of a 4-mile run or 2 hours of singles tennis. Even playing in a cart, not that we recommend it, burns 1,300 calories. Golf's been proven to lower your blood glucose levels and reduce body weight and improve both balance control and confidence among all age groups. I was talking to Mike McCallister earlier, and we agreed that golf's the only sports where even the spectators get exercise. But we know that golf's only one of the answers, and we're here to talk about the bigger picture of wellness and the workplace. As we heard this morning, 70% of medical costs are related to smoking, physical inactivity, food choices, and stress. You fix those things, and you can cut health care before anybody even goes to the doctors or the hospital. It's all about changing habits or breaking addictions or getting people to go to the gym. But those are things that a lot of people don't want to hear from their employers, and that's what we're here to talk about. We're gonna start with our first panelist, who's going to make a few minutes of opening remarks. Travis Bogard, the Chief Marketing Officer of Jawbone, the innovative maker of technology for the mobile lifestyle. One of Jawbone's neat new products is called the Up Band. It tracks workouts, food consumption, and sleep behavior, which is really those are the things at the heart of our discussion. Travis, you want to lead us?
Sure. So we had great discussions this morning, and a couple of things that really stuck out to me was the discussion about how do we affect some of this change from outside the system, and how do we get that to come from within, and the passion from within. And that's a lot about what we've been thinking about, is how do we get people to be consumers of their own health? Because I think most people, we're not today. Most people know more about their iPhone than they do their own health. And if you think about what it means to be a consumer of something, you're passionate about it, you research it, you share tips with friends about new discoveries you have, and that's just not how we're living today. But I think there's a lot of power in that idea. The second thing is, there's been a lot of discussion about behavior change and how do we affect that and these problems we're trying to solve. And when we started talking about how do we build a product in this space, we talked with our public health friends, and they said, there's many reasons we are where we are. And there's at the core we need behavior change to do that, but that's really hard to make happen. And when we started looking at it from a tech industry, we said, look, who checked into restaurants 2 years ago? Who expected to spend hours navigating Facebook pages? Who waited in line to buy a phone? I mean, these are very massive behavioral shifts that have happened in a very short period of time, and they've all been driven by this sort of consumer desire to get engaged and learn and be part of that. And then the third thing was, how do we build, think about this as lifestyle. Being healthy is not about the hour in the day that I can be healthy. It's the 1,000 little decisions that I make throughout the day, every day of the week. And to solve that, you have to have something that's with the user at all times during those 1,000 little decisions. And so that's where we really started out the landscape that we were looking at. And what we ended up creating, as you mentioned, is this product called Up. It's a band that you wear around 24/7, really can disappear onto your body. Wear it in the shower, wear it to bed, and it tracks, that between that and the application running on the phone will track your movement throughout the day, your steps, when those steps happen, the intensity of those steps, your workouts, and then your sleep. When you went to bed, when you woke up, your deep sleep versus your light sleep, and also your food. So we think about it as eat, sleep, and move, all tied together, as Dr. Hyman was talking about, into a social network. So you have that peer support and that reciprocal motivation to keep you moving. So that's the start of what we're looking at and how we're kind of coming at this space.
Thanks, Travis. James Curleigh, the CEO a title I've never heard before, the Chief Recess Officer of Keen, the maker of hybrid, outdoor, and casual footwear. Jim, tell us about your Recess is Back initiative and your title.
You say you want a revolution, well, you know, let's see a few hands, wake up after lunch, we all want to change the world. And then they say, you real guy, you got a real solution, and the song goes on to say, we're all doing what we can, and I think in this era, we're not doing everything we can, and we are at Keen Footwear, we're an 8-year-old, and we tend to think like 8-year-olds. We were born, we had a simple design challenge, and we asked ourselves, can a sandal protect your toes? And do you remember less than 10 years ago, you had multiple choices when you went on various trips, and we just thought to ourselves, maybe there's a better solution. And from that one little moment of, can a sandal protect your toes, we created a shoe, and we said, we called it original hybrid footwear, and it sounded really cool at the time. Who wants some original hybrid footwear? And then we said, well, who uses it? And we said, well, that would be people who live a hybrid life. And we said, well, what's a hybrid life? And that started us on this journey to talk about the notion of a philosophy centering around hybrid life. And hybrid life to us is encouraging people to create, to play, and to care. And it's as simple as that. And from that point on, we started saying, well, who is our consumer? And we said, well, we don't have consumers. Let's build fans. And then we talked about hybrid innovation. And we said, let's be inclusive. Let's not overly segment the world. I can tell you as a guy in product and in marketing that the world is so segmented today. You end up having to look through your market in a microscope. And we said, what if we said the outdoors is any place without a ceiling? What if we said from a 1-year-old to a 101-year-old, that's our market? And if we just make product that we think has this hybrid innovation to it, by the way, and hopefully is functional, practical, useful, and some fun, then we can start to set up a brand and a business. And 8 years later, we're still thinking like 8-year-olds, and we've done really, really cool things with our hybrid life philosophy. We started a hybrid care program where we take care of tons of issues around the world. We either react to earthquake situations or natural disasters in Haiti and the Sichuan area of China. I was over in Japan in the spring working with that project, and we recognize the need to be more proactive. And so we have the hybrid care down, we have the create down with our product, and the play side was missing. And we said, well, what would an 8-year-old do? Well, ask an 8-year-old what the funnest thing he did at school today was. What's he gonna say? What was the funnest thing you did at school? Right? Admit it, right? Recess. So we said, why don't we bring recess back? And not just for kids, but for adults. And somewhere along the way, if the funnest thing you did at school over the course of time got taken away from you, why? Don't let the man take away recess, bring it back. So at Keen, we're bringing it back.
We'll have to get back to recess in our conversation about how we're going to get that done. But Mike McCallister is next up. He's the chairman and CEO of Humana, the sponsor of this week's PGA Tour event, and the visionary who was able to connect the tour event to all that's come this morning. Really, Humana is about achieving lifelong well-being, at least as Mike has envisioned it for us. So, Mike. Tell us about.
Thank you. I get worried when someone calls me a visionary because I'm not sure what that is. But it's a pleasure to be here and be a part of this. We really, as a company, have a sort of a unique view of the world. We're up to our eyeballs in healthcare and have been forever. And in our role, we have a significant connectivity to virtually everything that goes on. So I come at this both as an employer with 40,000 people, but also someone who wakes up every day trying to figure out how to get better healthcare results, lower cost, value for money, and all those sort of things. So I won't rehash the background because you've heard it a number of times today, but the problem is straightforward. I can tell you from a business perspective, there's about $1 trillion a year wasted in productivity from people not being healthy at work, and even if they're there, not being as productive as they could be. So we start from the standpoint that it matters at a number of levels: personal, business, economic, all of those things. We do have the benefit of knowing some things others do not know from our role. And for example, in the area of body mass index, we have an ability to know what somebody's body mass index is, as well as what they spend money on in healthcare. And when you compare those things, you find out very quickly that people with a BMI above 30 spend almost all of the money. So you start with a very direct black and white target. We know this matters. We have to get at it. But the problem we've had is we've never been, and you've heard this terminology several times this morning, we've never had a great way to get at sustainable behavior change. And the question is, how do you do that? So we've been working on it for a number of years, and we've been doing it with kids and adults and seniors and this sort of thing. And we've learned quite a bit. We think, given the databases that we have and what we know about people, we have an opportunity to really help here and look for ways to do that. We think individuals are going to have to really solve this problem, and it all gets down to the question of health and fitness and wellness and this sort of thing. And the system itself is not going to fix this. There's a number of areas we're working. Applied health analytics. I'm a big believer, and our company is really getting behind the idea of behavioral economics and the implications of what would cause us as individuals to behave differently, and does money matter, or other things that would have us make decision A versus decision B. Because we know in the rest of our world, we do it all the time, and we pay attention to things, and we act in certain ways. And if we could learn how to bring some of that smart analytical activity into developing products, services, interactions, communications, we might be in a better position to help with that behavior change on top of everything else you've heard today. So we're doing that. We often try everything on our Humana associates, all 40,000. We don't refer to them as lab rats, but sometimes they feel that way. And so we've tested things around various competitions, all sorts of programs. We're constantly running pilots. We ran one this last year that was modeled after the Biggest Loser program. You probably saw that on television. In our company population, for those that participated, they lost about 12,000 pounds over the course of a handful of months. So we know some of these things will work. The research will also tell you that if you stop them, you tend to lose what you've gained. So we're going to have to find a way to make this sustainable. We think there's a way to do that, bringing in concepts we have elsewhere in our lives. Everyone in this room probably has a frequent flyer card from some airline in your pocket. I know it motivates you to make certain decisions as you're passing through airports. Why doesn't that show up somewhere in healthcare so that we have incentives and rewards platforms, and we get accountability and currency being built and this sort of thing to help us potentially nudge us in the direction of health? And I think we have a big opportunity to do that. We're working with the Clinton Foundation on the Alliance for the Healthcare the healthier generation with kids, and we've even built different benefit designs and insurance products around those ideas to see if we could do something in that space. We had something a few years ago called the Horsepower Challenge, where the real premise was, could we take digital capture type of things that we just heard about from Travis and that I brought today, and if you had kids in a situation where there was some sort of a competitive environment and you were digitally capturing their behavior and their activities, how would they behave and what would they do differently? Back to the concept of recess and potentially the things we used to do as kids. And what we learned, we worked with about 20 different congressional districts around the country. We were very bipartisan, 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans. We got the congressmen and senators involved. Ran it for months and months, and it was unbelievable what happened. The activity level of these kids really shot up. We connected it to their current world with computer-based gaming support. So we tried to meet them where they were, had them do this, had them use pedometers, did a digital capture on a daily basis of all their activities, and found incredible increase in volume over time when they were given an opportunity to build out an avatar environment that they were working with. So there's fun ways to do these things, and we're going to have to find them, because whatever we've been doing historically is not working. We always try to talk in terms of finding healthy things that are fun and fun things that are healthy, and the more of that we can do, the better off we are. So we did a big bike program. We took 1,000 bikes to the Democratic Convention, 1,000 bikes to the Republican Convention a few years ago to see what would happen there. They burned off 50,000 miles of activity over the course of a week. So we know people can do these things. These are not, bicycles have been around for a long time, but capturing distances, reporting a leaderboard. They were always published who was doing the most. There were awards, there were prizes, all sorts of things, and remarkably, we got a lot of activity. So I'll just end by saying I think there's a place for innovation, consumer behavior type of activities to be embedded in everything else we're trying to do here. We know that preaching is not working. We know people really know what it takes to be healthy. It's not rocket science. Eat less, exercise more, quit smoking. Yet we don't do it. So the question is, where does innovation meet the other ideas, and where does the new digital capability, where does the fun of social networking show up? And all of that, and how do you bring all that together to really sort of set up an environment where we can have a little more fun in health? Because I don't know about you, but I don't think dealing with the healthcare system is all that much fun. So we can do better.
Thanks, Mike. You've really teed up the discussion. We'll be back to a few of those topics. Next is Bob Lanier, a legend. He played 14 seasons in the NBA for the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1992, and now special assistant to the commissioner and NBA Cares Global Ambassador. You're a persuasive guy on the golf course and in the playground. You've really built community, and that's one of the issues, whether it's the workplace or the playground. You need to really build a community support system to affect the changes we're talking about.
Well,
Bob?
first of all, let me say hello from our esteemed Commissioner David Stern to Mr. Clinton and the Clinton Foundation for all the work that they do globally. So y'all give them a great big hand, because we wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. The NBA's mission is about using our visibility to create not only good but do well in terms of leadership and social responsibility. We want to try to do that in places all around the globe. We have a program called NBA Cares, is what I've been involved in for many, many years, and it reaches about, I don't know, millions of people around the globe. And what we've done is probably made about $165 million for charities. We've had about 1.7 million man-hours of volunteer time. We've created 565 places for kids and families to live, learn, and play. Do programs like Basketball Without Borders, where we will go to 100 territories across the globe, bring basketball development into these grassroots countries. And not only, we use that as the carrot to get to the young people, but that we teach them about life skills and about leadership and about how they can go back in their community and become the leaders and make a difference. HIV/AIDS awareness for them is integral to a lot of the fight that they have. We have a Vaccine for Teens event that we do with Santa Fe Pasteur, for instance, and we use our great players, which is our greatest resource, to come in and talk to kids in schools about flu, meningococcal meningitis, whooping cough, diseases that are serious yet preventable. And we try to engage the kids in a process, because you got to understand, all of us didn't come up in suburban kind of environments and these kind of societies that had support mechanisms. Most of the kids that we deal with in these environments are at-risk kids. And so you got to get in, connect with them on their level, which is the key to, I think, exchanging messaging and make learning fun for them. We do a WNBA Fit, get kids engaged in rooms and make the process for them fun, so that they get engaged in moving their bodies and moving their minds, and then try to get them to say, you know what, I like this. It's a cool thing to do. It's going to help me in life. And then we use, again, people like Lisa Leslie or Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, Dominique Wilkins. Y'all might not know some of them names, but for people in basketball, they're legendary figures that kids will pay attention to. It's a way to get the messaging to them in a fun way and get them engaged, because knowledge for kids is power, and you got to kind of connect with them on their level. And that's what I think the NBA does in a great way between us. You get partners, your sponsorship and marketing partners, you get them involved in that process. It's part of our DNA, just like Mike just talked about, it's part of their DNA. And when you do that collectively, it empowers you to make a vast difference, not only domestically, but globally.
Thank you, Bob. Casey Wasserman is chairman and CEO of the Wasserman Media Group, one of the foremost sports and entertainment agencies, which he founded in 2002. He also heads his family's charitable Wasserman Foundation. Casey, your company's all about the active lifestyle.
We are, and we're here because, like everyone else in this room, the childhood obesity epidemic is frankly staggering. And what struck us as a company and a group of employees is that in the very kid's room who is least active and most struggling with weight gain is probably a poster of Derek Rose, our client, or Hope Solo, or Ricky Fowler. And so the people that they're looking up to embody that healthy lifestyle, and yet they're doing almost nothing to replicate that in their own lives. And so the commitment we've made is really to leverage our 1,200 athletes to connect with kids in very meaningful ways. First and foremost, in a partnership with the Alliance, we're asking our athletes to connect with schools in communities all over this country and become actual in-person role models for those kids that are taking meaningful steps to make themselves healthier, to make the school environment healthier, not just in terms of activity, but in terms of food. Secondly, we want those athletes and our clients to leverage their extensive reach in social media to encourage kids to be active, right? So not just to understand how many points they scored or how well they played in a game, but to think about how they're living their lives and how they're taking control and power over their own lives. And lastly, frankly, a leave behind for a lot of the schools, which is a DVD about physical activity. So as opposed to a teacher or an instructor, hopefully it's an athlete creating opportunities for those kids to really connect with them and to follow their lead physically in terms of how they're living their life. We've now done this in 2 cities, in Detroit and Los Angeles, and working with the Alliance, our goal is, and we intend to launch this in as many cities around the country as we can.
Thank you, Casey. Before we get to the corporate wellness issue, I wanted to start with the individual. Being in Palm Springs, you can't help but get away from Bob Hope and Eisenhower and the heritage of this whole place. And it reminded me of a story I'd heard that George Shultz told. Back in 1968, when he was selected as Secretary of Labor under Nixon, one of his first moves was to visit former President Eisenhower, who was recovering from one of his many heart attacks in Walter Reed Hospital. And when he went to visit him, he was surprised at just how well briefed the president was on the Department of Labor. And as he was getting ready to leave, Ike wagged his finger at him and said, "Young man, let me leave you with one thing. You're going to work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week in the service of your government. And if that's what you do, there's no way you're going to be able to do your job." Eisenhower really believed in recreation. He played a lot of golf, he did a lot of recreating, and he felt that it was an important part of the formula. Today, we see so many people get so consumed by the requirements of their job that they just devote more and more time to it and can't find time to devote to the things we're talking about. So what's your advice for forcing us to step back and take these things into account? Mike?
I'll start. I mean, the word forcing is one we try to stay away from. We're encouraging and motivating and incentivizing. But one of the things we can do as a company, which we have, is try to make it easy. So anywhere we have a congregation of people, and like I said, we have a lot of them, we have put in the gyms, and we've made it easy to do those things, and then we've tried to start incentive programs to get them all linked together and set up things in the company and trying to build a culture around the subject. And there's a lot of little pieces. I don't think there's a single answer to any of that. But the first thing is to make it easy, and it's not a huge investment. If you've got a grouping of people together, it can be done. So that's a simple, straightforward thing to do.
And the other added point I would make to that is that you make it fun. A lot of things we do at the NBA corporately in terms of getting people engaged in health and wellness is, make departments against one another. And who walks the most, who engages in the most philanthropic deeds in terms of going into schools, having a mentoring program. So you not only have to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk as well. On a level, when you do these kinds of things, just like learning was for all of us coming up, you got to make learning fun for anybody, because that's the way that you'll connect with them, and that's the way you'll empower them to be what you want them to be?
So, as my wife can attest, if I'm awake, I'm working. So I kind of fit in that demographic. And, you know, as I mentioned before, we think about this sort of health is about the things that you do throughout the entire day. And so finding that hour at the end of the day is virtually impossible for me in my current work style. But one of the discoveries I had with you know, our product was, you know, I've always considered myself relatively health aware, but I discovered one day, you know, I'd look down, it was kind of noon, and I had 6,000 or 7,000 steps, and I was, you know, where'd this come from? I've done nothing but come in, been on the phone all day. And I kind of looked back, and we, you know, the way we present it lets you see when those steps happen. And I looked back and I said, figured out that those were between 10 and 10:30. That's when I was on a conference call where I'd been pacing around the office the entire time. And so, you know, that was an interesting discovery for me of how do you actually integrate that throughout your entire day. And I shared it with a couple of coworkers and some partners we work with. And, you know, he was seeing our charts and saying, how are you getting this many steps? And now he's taking every single one of his one-on-ones and his conference calls, walking out of the office and things like that. And so I think it's really, as you start to learn about this and as you can start sharing tips, it's about how do you integrate health throughout your entire day and think of it in those terms in everything that you're doing.
Yeah, let me take you back to the 70s for a second. In the family station wagon, rolling, and I remember driving down, I think we're living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I said to my dad, what are all those people doing outside kind of huddled together? What do they do? Like, oh, they're having a smoke break. And I thought to myself, wow, a smoke break. And I think to your collective points, I mean, back in the day, companies made it easier to have smoke breaks than to have recess. Imagine if you were walking by your boss and you said, hey, Chad, where are you going? I'm going to have a smoke. A, your boss would join you, or B, he'd say, oh, okay. Imagine if you said, where are you going? I'm going to take recess. You're, what? You'd get pulled back into the cubicle. So fast forward, I said, man, if I ever get in charge, I'm going to put recess back in. And I really believe that as business leaders, we spend time looking at things called a P&L. We look at a thing called the balance sheet, and we look at something called cash flow. Those are the three instruments at the dashboards that we have to look at. But and I really believe this, that not enough of us look at the personal P&L, the personal balance sheet, and what I would call, maybe learning this morning, what would be not the cash flow, but the health flow. What is the flow that this could help you understand? And I think from that point, we started saying, let's truly bring recess back. And we're in the outdoor business, so we sort of have to take a leadership role in that. And we did. And what I would say is that I hear the word culture often. And often what happens is business leaders, they say, well, we'll get the business where it needs to be first, then we'll focus on the culture. You know, it's almost like you get one and then you get the other. And what I've learned over time is that if you put the culture in motion, not just establishment, but put the culture in motion and demonstrate that you're part of it, then the business tends to be in motion as well.
One of the groups that we're hoping is listening are the chief executives who run the companies. A study funded by the Centers for Disease Control concluded that the return on investment for corporate wellness is about 300%, $3 for every dollar invested, and other studies say it's 5 times and sometimes north of that. But it takes corporate guts to put up a sizable sum investing in this and wait for the long-term payoff, because it doesn't pay off maybe even in the first year. So how do you convince your fellow CEOs that it's worth the money to put in a gym or to create a program like as you're suggesting?
I'll start. I went to Davos a couple of years ago and left there with a job that I didn't seek out. I got to be chairman of the new Global Worksite Wellness Alliance, which is actually an effort to make the business case. Now, there are studies out there that reflect paybacks like that, but I can tell you that there's whether it's credible work or not, a lot of big companies just don't buy it yet. And so there's about 100 of us at this point. We started with a dozen companies. They're global in nature. And basically we're working together to try to build the definitive business case for the investments necessary to do what you talked about. And so we'll see. We're sharing everything we've done as companies, and these are reasonably progressive organizations that have really decided, whether we like it or not, we're going to have to take on the health of our people and help these people get to a different place, if for no other reason than the productivity measure I mentioned earlier. So we're into it a couple of years, and we'll be reporting out next week there in Switzerland. But there's work being done to try to get to that point, because I think the minute businesses can really get their head around the real payback and feel comfortable that that dollar spent gets them something, I think we've got one more major tool on this journey and in this work that we don't have today at the level we should.
I mean, I think part, and to carry on from that, is one, it obviously has to be a priority for people starting at the top. If it's not a priority at the top, it will never happen. I think the other thing that's going to be important for it to develop is it has to be easy to implement, right? All this innovation, all this technology has made so much of what companies do so much easier to do, and this is one area where it's not, you can't point to a particularly simple thing that a company can do on a cookie cutter basis and implement to improve the lives. And I think the more we lower the barriers to entry for companies to implement and make this a part of their culture, the more adoption there will be. But to Humana's credit, there have to be companies like that on a global basis who are taking a leadership position and setting the example for others to follow.
And I think the NBA has been blessed because back in '88, I believe, was the first time David Stern called me to come in and talk about an educational initiative for children. And then we get Kathy Barnes, who's our executive VP of Player Relations and Social Responsibility, who lives and breathes health and wellness and making a difference. And then her and David together have changed the whole culture and climate of what we do from a business standpoint globally. So we get our sponsors involved, we get them actively engaged, the DNA for making money and doing great deeds come together in a powerful way.
You know, I would also say I completely agree with the simplicity and the make it easy to do what you are trying to set in motion. And we have a little simple saying at Keen. We call it the Keen Mullet. You know what a mullet haircut is? Remember that one? This in the front, that in the back. At Keen, we talk about being simple on the front, but sophisticated in the back. And I don't think anyone disputes the facts today. We heard a lot of information, a lot of percentages, a lot of details. I think we need to move past the information age, and we need to move into the synthesizing age and the simplicity age. And so what we've tried to do at Keen is use that mantra to have simplicity at our fingertips. And then I would encourage, I really have appreciated we get the art of recess at Keen. Let me tell you, I love recess. We get the art of recess, and we've come to know the science of recess. We've worked with Dr. Tony Yancey from UCLA to really try to give us the science and the grounding of that. So 8-year-olds, when they don't know things, they tend to ask people that really know things. So, and what we found is that the combination of art and science can come together really, really well. And then when you start to think about recess and you start thinking about timing, let me put this in your mind. We're a young company. The average tenure of our team is about 2.5 years old. The average age is about 28. Okay, so watch this for a second. What you heard from Travis here, his life does this with his work. Every 28-year-old, they don't have home phones. They have a cell phone. That's what they have. They blend, and by the way, so do I, work-life balance. And the return on investment as measured in productivity is interesting. Guess what happened to me last week? We live in a competitive hub. There's a company up there. I always forget the name. It's got a swoosh on it, and it's a really big company up there. There's another company that has one tough mother named Columbia Sportswear, and there's Adidas North America. So we're the little Davids amongst the Goliaths. And I know we were trying to recruit this kid, and recruiting is, as much as you think there's people out there, the right people are kind of hard to find. And so this kid who we thought was pretty unique, and he definitely wanted to work at Keen. We also found he was interviewing at another place, one of the other places. And he finally joined us. I said, hey, well, why Keen? He says, well, man, I like you guys. You guys are interesting, but you guys have a recess. And think about that as a recruiting tool, as a motivator, as a way to say we can connect with what you connect with. And so if it's part of your future team's balance point, make it part of your company's point.
So I'm going to come at this from a different direction, and I think we, as executives, need to drive that through the behavior. But I would say that if you walk into most companies today and look around, What are people carrying around? They're carrying around an iPhone. They're carrying around an iPad, a Mac of some kind. These were not decisions that happened by the CEO and CTO. In fact, they were against those decisions. These happened by the individuals saying, I want to do this and I'm going to do this. And so I think a lot of it starts and is ultimately going to have to be driven by the individuals bringing that into the workforce, bringing that into their social circles. And that's what's going to drive this. It's going to be people wanting it, because I don't think people want to be handed, here's what you need to do. I think they're going to drive, here's what I want to do. And I think that's ultimately how you're going to get that change. And then you do need an environment that's going to be accepting of it, but it has to start with the person, I think.
Mike, your eyes are sparkling. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, we had the same IT arguments inside, one version versus another. I think that's one more example of we can be optimistic to some extent, because we have new tools and things that we've never had before. I mean, virtually everybody has a phone in their pocket. We have a ubiquitous real-time communication capability that's never existed except in the last few years. Now, if we're trying to address health and fitness and motivation and whatever we're doing, to not really fully understand and utilize that would be crazy. So there's a lot of people putting a lot of time and energy in trying to find out where does health and wellness and fitness and well-being and all these things intersect with that platform of a ubiquitous environment around real-time communication. And I would tell you that our experience with consumers has been on any number of levels and things, everybody from 68 to 10. Actionable information will get people to make very good decisions that are in their best interest. Not always, but almost always. And so I think there's a huge ground to be taken by learning how to use these new tools and really piggybacking on new and interesting and intuitive and fun technology.
It seems that having a wellness advocate, and James, you look like you're the wellness advocate at Keen. It's great when it's the chief executive of the company, but you need somebody to educate, motivate, and guide both employees and the company. How do you go about finding that person to help build the vision?
I'm anxious to hear this one too.
I actually, let me, if I can be so bold as to rephrase the question, I think the minute you put it in the hands, and I have a ton of respect for our HR world and for what we call people, organization, and culture, and I think the starting point, and certainly for us, by the way, we have an advantage. We're 8 years old, and our culture is still evolving. We're not part of an organization where we used to do this and now we have to do that. And we're not turning this huge ship around to a culture of lifestyle and balance, and that's the industry we're in. So we have an advantage there. But what I would say is it truly has to be not just leadership driven, but some of the individuals in the organization need to be empowered to know that their ideas can convert into action that are visible and the results are there in front of them. Anyone here ever disc golf before? Anyone tried disc golfing? It's basically you throw a frisbee, all right, into a hole, and it's basically the hippie version of pro golf, but it's taken on a really interesting twist for families and for outdoor action. You can do it in an hour. And one of our kids, literally kids in the marketing department, came up and said, "Hey, Curleigh, can we do a disc golf shoe? It's really popular, and it'd be really cool if Keen, we could be the official disc golf shoe of the world." And I'm thinking, here we go. And we let him do it. And this kid took this on. He now has half the company playing disc golf. Our shoes are worn by disc golf pros around the world. And we started something that wasn't a wellness officer saying, here are the choices you can select, and here's the area, and here's the map. It was one kid going, let's play disc golf, let's make a shoe. And now literally we're the official supplier of disc golf shoes around the world because of Dave Monk in marketing. And we're... So I would spread it across the organization.
Not that you're dissing the HR department, though. Compulsory wellness. Mike touched on this. Some companies have gone beyond banning smoking in the workplace to restricting food choices in the cafeteria and even managing fitness program participation through insurance rebates. Obviously, there are issues of discrimination and privacy here, but is this the future?
I get to start every one of these, huh? Okay, good. You know, I've always thought of it, and we've really executed on this. It is a combination of carrots and sticks. We were very early in the whole business of fighting smoking. It cost our people a lot more money to be a smoker than not, which also has taught me that this is a very addictive thing, because it's amazing what people will pay to continue to smoke. So that's sort of the stick side. You know, we tend to be more aligned around give people transparency and give them choices and let them choose. So, for example, in our company today, if you are a diabetic, and a lot of talk this morning about diabetics, if you're a diabetic, and we have a wall between our company and the insurance side, so there's privacy considerations. But what happens is basically if you choose not to participate in something that'll help you manage your diabetes, then there's financial implications to making that choice. But you don't have to do it. But there is a decision, and there's financial implications attached to it, and so that's relatively new. So, but it's always been a combination of incentives, and you know, I think they have some level of impact with some people. One of the things we've also learned is people are all different, and what motivates one, the other one has no interest in, and so like, again, you have to have a little bit of all of this going, because I don't think anybody's found the secret sauce yet.
You know, it's interesting that you talked about diabetes, because when I was young, and you'd be sitting around your grandmama's house or your, granddaddy's house early on, and there would always be an uncle. You know, Uncle Harry was my uncle, and he had at the time I didn't know it was neuropathy. You know, I asked Mom Alice, I said, what happened to Uncle Harry, that he hobbles when he walks? Well, honey, that sugar got to him. He wanted to eat that sweet potato pie all the time and that fried food. So, those are the kind of things in terms of the culture. Like I just did a PSA for diabetes with a couple of other players, Tamika Catchings, I think Carlos Boozer is one of them, Avery Johnson. And being able to use all of these social media platforms to get the messaging out to the public, to try to influence young people and families about changing nutrition and eating habits and being active so that they don't, they can deal with these bad things that happen in the culture of our families, especially black folk growing up. I like that. So it makes a heck of a lot of difference when you're able to use that and extend your branches. But I'm going to leave y'all with this one thought, that you don't have to be some big major corporation of some sort to be a difference maker. Do things within your realm of reach, whether it be in your own household with your kids, your grandkids, a neighbor, an elderly person. Extend and help them, give them information. That's how we can all make a difference and make the world a better place.
Let's take a question or two from the floor. I think we have some rovers out there who can point a microphone at you if you have a question for the distinguished panel. Right here, yes, please.
Take your time.
Thank you. Okay. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice, not a corporate person, and also a writer. I write books. And I want to know, what I know about people is that they need steps. They need it. I agree with you about it being easy. I agree with you about it being accessible. I agree with you about being open to people's ideas. But I also know from working with my clients that people need steps. They need to know some incremental, small things they can do that feel within their capability at this moment. If I've never walked, how do I start walking,
By taking one step at a time, number one. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a fairly simple thing, I think, anyway. Just get to moving, number one. And I think you got to look at what somebody told me. They said, look at your palm size. Even though my palm might be bigger than his palm or his palm or his palm, look at your palm size. Change your eating habits. Eat what's no more than a palm of your hand more times a day. And that's how you're being active, you stay fit. And at 63, I'm looking pretty darn good at 63 for an ex-ball player,
Yeah, I would say going along the same lines, invest in chalk. Get a piece of chalk. outside your office on the way in and draw a little hopscotch. Seriously, watch that. And then put a hula hoop in your office, all right? And watch a smile on someone's face. The first time someone will walk around the hopscotch, and then someone will see if anyone's looking, and they'll get up there and they'll give a little like, and then they'll walk in. So that's the one step at a time can truly start. And think about what a kid would think about. Kids are creative. They have little things around them, and if they don't have the toys that they got for Christmas, they go make things, they build things, they think about things. And kids take natural steps. And somewhere along the line, as humans, we get a little serious. And I would say, at Keen, one of the, I think, secrets, and it's not that much of a secret, maybe you can tell, we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take our brand and our business and our team and our customers and everything and our product really seriously. And I think it starts with the attitude of not taking yourself too seriously. And then the steps can be simple ones or sophisticated ones, but I agree with you, getting people to take one step with confidence. I think that's the important thing. I've seen people take steps and it didn't work for them, and then they say, forget it, I'm going back to what I used to do. Take a step to create a rhythm, and once you get a rhythm, you change habits. And that's not easy to do, but if recess was rhythmic, remember, recess, anyone know who invented recess?
Who invented rhythm?
You did. You did. I know. I remember your moves. Recess was invented by Bronson Alcott in about 1860. He was a strict academic, father of Louisa May Alcott, and he developed a modern-day curriculum for time-bound academic sequences in school. And what he recognized was in order to get very focused and to have the kids very focused, he needed to let them get outside, to socialize, to engage, to create some games, to see what other kids did, to just get some fresh air and re-energize. And by coming back into the classroom, they could focus better. This was done in 1854. And now we have all the science and statistics to tell us that, oh, by the way, if you take a 15-minute break, you can be more focused, productivity goes up, all this stuff. It was invented 200 and something years ago. So I would urge us all to understand that the notion of recess is very real for us. As fun as it sounds, there was a very specific starting point that was a rhythm every day created, and kids knew that they could get out and do something interesting for that moment in time.
I would also say that, and it's what's exciting about what Jawbone is doing is that, we now have facts about everybody's health, and it's very accessible to people. And I think in this area in this age of a lack of accountability about your own health is something people have to take ownership for. I've never seen someone lose weight by eating healthy and exercising a lot. I mean, not gain weight, sorry. So people need to be honest with themselves. And I think people need to be honest with themselves, and being able to track that data and understanding and being accountable for what you actually do to your body and put in your body is a meaningful step in the right direction.
And I think you touched on a good point, which is people are going to start at a different place, and they're going to have different goals of where they're trying to go, and at what pace they want to go. And so a lot of it is how do you take that track and measurement and connect it up to the group of people who are going to help them get there along the path they want to go. I mean, if you take the extremes, you have vegans of the world and you have Atkins, and people are going to choose those different paths they want to go down, and you want to be able to see which ones are working, what is that accountability, which things are actually connecting up. And so that's a lot of what we've been thinking about is, when you think about the dietitians and the nutritionists and others of the world in health, it's actually one of the largest small businesses categories out there. And those people don't know how to actually connect to their consumers in a scalable way. And so a lot of what we've been trying to do is create the platform so people can actually track their behavior with their clients on an ongoing basis and give that dialogue. It's not just a monologue of you should do this, but you tell them what to do, you see what they're doing, and then you can give helpful advice along the way.
Yes, one more question from the audience up front here.
How you doing? Fran? How's Fran?
Car, will not drink and drive. And what I'm curious about, because this is so urgent and there's so many innovations, as you were saying, that we already have in place, how do we do, what is the don't drink and drive of the health movement that immediately wakes up the consumer to become an educated medical consumer? And because I think people are hungry, they want it, as you were talking about, innovation done differently. And we're smart enough, I mean, it's Humana, it's Clinton, it's all of these, incredible models. We need to figure out that campaign, and not just a message, one that sparks you into those 30 days of change or a real different lifestyles. We've seen it with seatbelts, we've seen it with don't drink and drive. We've got to do it for the healthcare movement, and I'm wondering what's our best thinking on that?
So, I think to me, it's what we were talking about before. I think this behavior change doesn't have to take that long. And we have plenty of examples, as I was talking about before, Facebook, Foursquare, all these things that have happened in very short periods of time. And so if we can tap into people, the same things that motivate people to be obsessed with those products, to be obsessed about this craze, consumerization of our health, I think you have a big win there. And we've seen it in the response we've gotten from our product and from the announcement. And some of it's about the product, but some of it's about just the interest in the space as a whole. And I think that's what's going to end up driving a lot of this.
One of the best arguments is that if you leave things alone, they're only going to get worse, and we know that's not an option from everything we've been hearing all day. So today's panel, the Clinton Foundation and the Humana's initiatives are all about breaking these cycles. We thank you for your attention, and I thank our panel. Mike, do you have a last word?
Before we break, in the spirit of the challenge and in the spirit of the Foundation's historical nature of always challenging the crowd before leaving, I've got two things I want to challenge the group to. One of them is, I know a lot of you are going to be around this week, and I have the low-tech version of the high-tech version there of pedometers, and we're going to donate $500,000 this week to the community here, and it'll be fitness and wellness focused based on how many steps people take. So there's thousands of these things that are going to be all over the community this week, and so if you're out there, pick one up. This one is Commissioner Fincham's, so I'm going to give this to you when we're finished. And the second one is, we just finished a playground this weekend here locally with a group called Kaboom, and I would encourage anybody here that has the capacity to find a way to work with these people to do so. It is the most incredible thing we've ever been associated with. We built about 10 of them, and it's part of that infrastructure that was discussed this morning, allowing a place for intergenerational people to go, grandparents, kids, all this. It's just a terrific program, and I really would give a shout out to them. Kaboom. Thank you.